Hello, team. Welcome back to another Line Warcast. This is your map today. A lot of water, a lot of land. Our two players in blue, Wongo Dongo, and in red, Lie Flat. In a 1v1. And here we go. Wongo Dongo is starting on the left-hand side of the map. Lie Flat here in the bottom right in red. We hear a bunch of barracks go down. I'm gonna mess up this name so many times. Wongo. I'm gonna keep saying Wongo Dongo. 3 barracks and 2 towns for blue. Red going for 4 factories immediately, 3 of which are building tanks. Lie Flat did take this water territory as one of the pre-selected territories in the picking phase, so they have access to this energy well. And judging by how many tanks there are, they will likely take it relatively quickly. In fact, they took this water territory as well. So there's 2 easy refinery spots for red to build. And there goes the first refinery now. Blue building their first factory on the left-hand side of the map. These 2 towns are going to be huge for blue because it's going to be a lot of economy to boost them at the beginning of this game. And using the pre-construction money, blue's definitely going to have an eco advantage. 400 for blue, 310 for red, who nearly has these 3 tanks completed. The tanks are going to go to the left-hand side potentially, and that's exactly what happens. The infantry for red is capping to the northeast. And there's a lot of economy that red could build as this game goes on. Another barracks in the south for Rongo, who's going to have a bunch of infantry. And this northern barracks and this other barracks that's relatively close, both of these are going to be great for blue to start capping to the north part of the map. And they'll certainly have the head start on it because it's difficult for red to get anything over to this part of the map. There's no dock to transport infantry across, and there's no airport to do commando drops. It'll be 6 tanks to begin the game, with the 7th already also being built out of this 4th factory for red. So a very powerful opener for red, but because of the spawn locations, it'll take a while for these tanks to get across. And the geography of the map's super interesting. I mean, Line War is one of the coolest parts about it is how the geography influences how the game is played. So this mountain range and this forest, the tanks won't be able to go through this without getting a huge speed penalty. So the only route that these red tanks could take that'll threaten blue's base is around the top here and through this little kind of pass. Sam's for Rongo, who's going for some industry and has quite a few capping units in the north, securing this one refinery. They're about to get a 2nd refinery as well under control, and a 3rd one to the south. And more tanks for red. Going for 4 tanks at a time out of these 4 factories. So we'll expect to see a 2nd refinery put down relatively quickly for red because the energy usage of these tanks as more get on the field is going to become quite a lot. 2nd factory for blue, close to home in this forest. And we can check the ecos. 380 for Lie Flat and 510 for Dongo. And we probably will expect to see blue's economy continue to grow quicker than red because of this capping action in the north. And it's still tanks. Just tanks. A depot from Lie Flat, which will mean that they can delay this 2nd refinery for a little bit because this one refinery will start storing energy in this depot. And here's the plan from red, to just move command these tanks through the mountains. The plan will probably change once red discovers that this is where Dongo has gone. Neither player is going to be able to see where the other one is at this point in time. I mean, this is Rongo's vision. Keep stumbling on the name, my apologies. And obviously lie flat. Can't see blue as well. Another town for blue, who has 3 SAMs now and an artillery piece. And blue's going to move these SAMs up to the mountain, like the edge of it. Still no airport for red, continuing with this heavy tank play. And we can see the energy usage from lie flat here, moving these tanks. Nearly running out of energy, and the tanks might get stranded a little bit in this mountain range. You can really see how much much slowly the tanks move through the forest. I've messed up how more slow the tanks are through the forest here. There's enough red tanks that they're going to be able to fight this many infantry. But the vision of tanks is quite limited. So you can even notice that this one infantry in the mountains can't be detected. Neither can this reinforcing infantry squad be seen. And this gives a lot of time for blue to prepare against this many tanks. There's an airport on the way now. The third town will certainly cement that blue is going to be ahead on eco. Now these tanks at home for red can't move until this second refinery is done. And we can eco check 490 for red, 662 for blue. The tanks are hanging out at the moment because they don't have the energy to move. Which is a good play from red, because if you start moving the tanks and they start popping off that black plume of smoke, they take more damage over the next 5 seconds. And I'd be very surprised if blue were to lose any of the buildings to this many tanks, just because of how slow they move. So blue's going to back up close to this town and all this infrastructure. And making great progress on the north part of the map. And continued tank production for red. First refinery is on the way for blue at this point. It's helicopters off the first airport. There's a second airport that is just being built from blue. This airport with strikers probably isn't in range of this refinery, but with the bombers, this airport probably could reach this energy producing structure for red, who's continuing to go 4 tanks at a time. And starting to make a move with these 7 tanks in the mountains. Luckily for Rongo, there is no refinery on this energy well, so the tanks aren't going to be able to destroy it. There's a good group of units at home now for blue. And a great amount of SAMs, with 4 SAMs here. And third airport for Dongo, who has the money to make this happen. With these almost to be 3 towns completed. So this one barracks in the north is sending everything back towards the south to defend against these tanks. Dongo is starting to dig in the mountain range. And these tanks are a little bit stranded. And over time, blue is going to build up enough helicopters to be able to either destroy these tanks or at the very least get them to run away. So no real risk of this town falling or any of these buildings. It's even a longer defensive line that Dongo's making here to ensure that these tanks can't just like break through the lines and then get into this open field where they're very deadly with their speed. And if we go top down, we can see just how much more blue has capped. Lie flat's making decent progress on the right-hand side of the map. There's still no barracks for red. And all just tanks. There's industry now, a town, and 2 lumber camps. or lie flat, who's moving out this enormous amount of tanks on 2 refineries. We can see just how much energy is being used. Even with a depot and 2 refineries, this energy usage is massive, massive, pardon me, from red. 2 helicopters now done for blue, a third one about to be completed, and there it is. And it'll be interesting to see if Dongo makes more helicopters out of this forward airport. And it looks like that is what the play is. There's a barracks in the north for blue. So very quickly, Dongo's going to have this entire north part of the map and probably meet lie flat in this forest. And energy-wise, it's really just these 2 refineries that lie flat has access to until they get up to the north with these 2 additional refineries that they could build on those energy wells. It would take a decent amount of helicopters for blue to defend this many tanks. And really the limiting factor here for red is the energy requirement of all these tanks. Because if the tanks could start breaking off into different little groups and then just haste moving towards high value targets like these airports or these refineries, then there's a chance that lie flat could do a lot of damage, but it's a little bit tough right now since the majority of these tanks can't move. These 7 in the south and the mountains are in a little bit of trouble. There's 2 helicopters on the way. Dongo's now showing the fact that they have helicopters by attacking into both these groups of tanks. But it is now 3 airports pumping out helicopters for blue. So over time, this will get easier for blue to defend, since helicopters are a great counter to tanks. Especially if the tanks can't really move all that freely. More industry for blue, who has these farms completed. Nearly has this 3rd refinery in the north. As soon as that territory is capped with the refinery, we'll probably expect to see red build on that energy source. And there's a 4th airport in the north as well. 2 refineries for Dongo at this point, which is enough to fly this many helicopters. And there's a lot of eco in the top left that blue is also going to be able to build over time. Still 4 tanks at a time for lie flat, who's building industry in the north. Tanks in the south have been cleaned up. Dongo already has this part of the map capped, so all these units can now start moving towards the east. The tanks are going for a big flank. But Dongo's now got 5 helicopters at the front here, building a depot at home to connect to these 2 refineries to ensure that these helicopters keep flying. And it's a 3rd refinery for blue in the south here, now that the tanks have been cleaned up, and 3 additional industry. So we probably expect to see blue have a way bigger economy. 1167 for blue and 947 for red. Who's still in a little bit of trouble on the energy. There's a 3rd refinery on the way. It's not close enough to this refinery to actually connect to this pipeline system. So either it's going to be a lone refinery or red's going to have to build a depot in the midway point. And 1st airport now for red. Probably a bunch of different options of what lie flat could build out of this airport. Interceptors could be decent against this many helicopters, but that's probably at the outer range of where interceptors could go. And now that red has this 3rd refinery, we'll see if these tanks can get loose. There's not a lot of infantry at home on this 1 refinery. So there's going to have to be helicopters that are used in the north to help out against these 6 tanks that are speeding towards this refinery. And blue's nearly got the entire north. Another town and more industry for lie flat in the top right. And another town for Dongo here in the forest, who is still building up quite the air force, continuing to go for helicopters in response to this continued tank production from Red, who now has just an enormous amount of tanks, and even a town in the south is able to destroy this refinery. The tanks, of course, don't have the greatest vision, so Red's vision of what Blue has been building and where these buildings are isn't all that great. They do, however, see this one airport, so these tanks are going to head towards the airport. The other tanks in the north looping around, going towards this refinery, which is a great play because it forces Rongo to actually split up these helicopters if they want to defend both of these pushes. The tanks are able to destroy airports super quickly. I mean, they're able to destroy buildings in general super quickly. So even with this many blue helicopters, there's enough tanks that Red is going to be able to destroy one of the airports. The bonus for blue here is that they've been building helicopters the entire time, so it's not like these planes land on the airport, so when these tanks take out the airport, no planes just explode for free. Another bonus of building helicopters, there's helicopters in the north as well, which are going to be huge to help blue keep control of the north and deal with all these infantry. A lot of industry and another depot in the top right. Or lie flat. So that's the other alternative to building a depot to connect these two refineries, is just building another depot to power these two refineries in the top right. Dongo's rebuilding this refinery and is going to lose this one in the top left. But this depot is full, so the helicopters are going to be able to keep flying. But you can tell that there's a little bit of fear on Blue's part losing both of these refineries, since these are power plants in the bottom left, which cost the same amount as a refinery but are 1/3 as effective. Rongo's got this town completed, so it's 4 towns in total for Blue. This northern airport in the forest is finally starting to build helicopters consistently. And 5 tanks try to rush by what is about 13 gazillion helicopters. They're not going to be able to do it. The power of the helicopters when they're just hovering over the target. And now this is a very difficult position for Red at this point in the game. We can take a top-down view. Clearly more blue on the map. There's more economy that's been built for Blue with all these different towns and industry. 1141 income for Red. 1528 for Blue. And now this main thrust from the tanks, it's so many tanks, but the helicopters are going to rush down to the south. Blue spots this and can see just how many tanks there are, so you can see how most of the Blue army is moving down this mountain range. It is interceptors out of these red airports. There's no aircraft carrier for lie flat to be able to get the interceptors closer to the action, so there's no real way that they're going to be able to cover these tanks. The red tanks do see this town, so we'll probably see some of the tanks split off from the group and start attacking. Because it's what, like 16-ish red tanks against as many helicopters for Blue that are slowly getting into the fight. There's no SAMs at all here for Red, so the helicopters can just trickle in one at a time. And we'll do a ton of damage to these red tanks since they can't move all that quickly through the mountains like I've been saying all game, like we've been seeing all game. And a submarine pen now for blue, which is going to be huge because it's going to be able to destroy this refinery. And we've already seen how much, like how important energy has been for Red's strategy. So when all is said and done, about 5 tanks get loose, heading towards this refinery. There's an artillery piece and a handful of infantry at home to defend. And probably enough helicopters that it's kind of close if these red tanks are going to be able to destroy this refinery. The depot is still relatively full for Dongo, but it's not full, like entirely full anymore. This group of tanks do get cleaned up. Red is going to destroy at least a town. Probably will get this refinery. Probably won't get these towns. But I'm 0 for 1 so far on those 2 guesses. The refinery stays alive. And here comes the next round of tanks. From Lie Flat, who is able to destroy that town. Submarine pen is completed, starting to build its first unit. And eco-wise 1316 for red and 1636 for blue. And this one tank will be able to destroy that farm. Might be able to destroy this other one as well. So I'm 0 for 2 on those 2 guesses. Sue me. And here come the helicopters. If Dongo can get the helicopters in a spot that they cover this choke, it really cuts off... I mean, it cuts off Lie Flat from doing anything with these tanks, really. Since this is the only way for the tanks to go. Thankfully, with this many interceptors, there are airstrips to get these red interceptors closer to the fight. So red would be able to defend this choke, and that's what we're seeing here. There's no SAMs up close for blue. But a ton of factories and production in the north. 3 factories and 5 barracks on the way, which gives Dongo definitely enough production to start pushing back here. 4 factories for Lie Flat is going to be the response to that. There's a lot of economy for red in the top right. And blue can't really scout it yet, but probably suspects that that has already been built or is at least on the way. First submarine is complete. And here go the tanks to try to get on top of this refinery again. The port is done. There is the city also complete for red, and that's why the economy is as close as it is. 1719 for blue, 1458 for red. And this tank column is taking a ton of damage on its way up to the refinery and will be greeted by enough artillery pieces that it'll be difficult for Lie Flat to get much done here. If the aim is to destroy this one refinery, with even more helicopters on the way from blue to defend. It's still only helicopter production out of all the airports for blue. And slowly Dongo's starting to build the economy in the top left. Really only missing the port at this point. Or the city if Dongo decides to turn that town into a city instead of building the port. 2 submarines will certainly be able to destroy this refinery. Even with this many interceptors, I'm not sure if this many interceptors could kill 2 subs. Maybe if they were sent quick enough, but this subs are stealth. And it'll be kind of a challenge to detect when the submarines start attacking the refinery. There's no audio cue that it's happening besides the sound of torpedoes or the visuals on the refinery taking damage. And this is a lot of units for blue. They're just taking on this fight against these red tanks. Still so many helicopters here for Dongo in the north. And all the production facilities are completed. So as mentioned, 4 factories against 3 factories and 5 barracks in the north. So blue definitely has the edge. Lie Flat's building the second city in the north. And this is Lie Flat's vision. Red's vision here, they can see the trail of these torpedoes, can see the damage being taken, but it is very subtle. So there is a dock on the way for Red, which is a great call. It's 4 airports total for Lie Flat, building 2 more barracks. And the first bombers are being produced as well. There's commandos out of these 2 barracks, so potentially going to be some commando drops from Red here, who loses the refinery. These commando drops would be able to hit this production. Lie Flat doesn't see that this is where all the units, or all the production facilities are. But over time, it's going to be pretty apparent that Dongo has built factories and barracks up north because of just how many units blue is going to show up with in this choke. The bombers can kind of cover these units. 4 tanks, it's just more tanks from Red. Interceptors spotting for the bombers to start trying to destroy these submarines. But 3 more factories from Dongo. And likely these 3 factories are going to be sent towards this choke in the south. All the subs from blue get cleaned up, but they are able to destroy that one refinery, which is the biggest win and pretty much kind of worth building the submarine pen and losing those subs in order to take out that refinery, especially because blue knows that it's pretty much an exclusively tank strat from Red, who shows no signs of changing, building 4 more tanks in the top right. 3 more barracks and 2 more towns for Dongo here. And this is the important part. If blue breaks through this position and gets on top of all this eco, then that is probably the game. And it looks like that's what's gonna be what happens. There's so many infantry here, they get the attack and defense bonus by being in the forest. And a handful of bombers isn't going to be enough for Red to destroy all this. Great airstrip placement from Red to get these planes closer to the front lines. And there are... It's the first transport plane, probably going to be more transport planes relatively soon. It's a 4th airport by this point, and a 4th factory in the north for Dongo, who's content to take this fight and kind of stall these tanks. With 5 helicopters on the way for blue, by this point, it'll be very difficult for Red to do anything. 3 interceptors against this many helicopters. There's just so many helicopters for blue here. In large enough numbers, helicopters can take on interceptors. But the land army from blue is big enough. 4 tanks at a time. Gonna be tough for Red to defend that. And income-wise, 1466 for Red, 1869 for blue. First transport boats are starting to send units across. Trying to land right here. And if there was a substantial number of units that were being transported across from multiple transport boats, there's a chance that Red could actually open up another front and at least force all these units to defend at home instead of being sent to the top right. But that is not what happens. Well played from both. Great game. Graph time. Gotta love the graphs. Well played. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about the game, if you want to go find games, talk to folks, ask questions, whatever it is, you can check out the Line War Discord. You can also check out Twitch. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/SodaQuackers. It's the same handle as YouTube. Thank you for the support on the channel. All the comments, all the likes, all the feedback, of course, all the subscribers. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, breakfast, lunch, dinner, wherever you are. We'll see you soon. Enjoy. Have fun on ladder. Peace.